Dominick Erne comes home from work. Instead of calling it a day, intensive training is on the agenda. The 26-year-old Swiss with Tibetan roots is a passionate table tennis player. He has already won several medals at the Swiss Championships. Now he is training for one special goal. He wants to play at the Olympic Games in Beijing next year, for Tibet.
Wir als Volk, die Tibeter,
the Tibetans as people, we are not recognised, and we want to show through our participation that we exist. It would be a great honour for us to take part here. The best moment would be to raise our flag and show that we are here. Dominick Erne grew up in Bern with a Swiss father and a Tibetan mother. Today he lives with his girlfriend in Zurich. His mother came to Switzerland as a child, having fled the Chinese invasion of Tibet. For a long time, Dominick felt little connection with Tibet, until he first visited the exiled Tibetan community in India. Through this journey, I realised something hidden in me, that this is my second home, and I wanted to learn more about my second origin. What my roots are. The wish to do something for my people is bigger. I want to properly get to know my roots. I notice even more that there is something inside me that belongs to the East. Dominick Erne is one of 9 young Tibetans from Switzerland who want to compete for their country at the Olympic Games, together with other Tibetan sportsmen from across the world. It was here at the home of the Swiss-Tibetan Friendship Society in Zurich that this idea came into being. The goal is to make people aware of the fate of occupied Tibet, but not through protests or a boycott. We want to show another image. We want to leave victimhood behind. And we want to participate with the same rights as sportsmen. But to talk about Tibet is to talk about politics. The country was occupied by China in 1950, and shortly thereafter it was declared Chinese territory. What the Chinese described as reclaiming a land which belonged to them, the Tibetans saw as bitter repression. The great uprising of the people in 1959 was brutally crushed. Even to this day there is neither freedom of worship nor freedom of speech. Since then, hundreds of thousands of Tibetans have fled, many to Switzerland. Almost 4,000 Tibetans live in Switzerland. That is one of the largest Tibetan communities outside Asia. Though they are well integrated, they are also trying to foster and develop their culture. When large celebrations are organised, such as the recent Constitution Day, Tibetan music and dance plays a part. Then the Tibetans celebrate their constitution in exile, and their spiritual leader, the Dalai Lama. Here, of course, the young Tibetans' ambition to go to the Olympics is on everybody's lips. Even when they're not the best athletes, they show the rest of the world that we Tibetans also exist on this planet. They make our rights valid. Dolkar Gyaltag also had to flee to Switzerland as a child after the Tibetans' people uprising. Her father was a member of the cabinet when the Chinese soldiers marched in. Some family members were arrested by the Chinese. Today, Dolkar lives with her children near Zurich. Her son Rigzin also wants to compete for Tibet at the Olympic Games in speed cycling. His mother is proud of his commitment.
Sport beruht auf Gerechtigkeit.
Sport stands for equity. And when someone feels that everything is based on injustice and on the abuse of human dignity, then it is very important to raise this subject, to report it. And this is admittedly a non-violent way. At 25, Rigzin is a journalism student. He has never been to Tibet himself, but the idea of competing in China with a Tibetan team has fascinated him. Because for the first time, you could come yourself in China, with the Tibetan flag, as a free Tibetan. That would be possible. A big political step, and for us athletes, a very motivating moment. Up till now, he has been a mere hobby cyclist, but now he has to step things up a gear. All the same, he wants to compete with the very top riders from all over the world. But it's unclear whether the International Olympic Committee will even let the Tibetan athletes compete, because Tibet is not a sovereign state. A few weeks ago, those responsible for the Tibetan team founded a National Olympic Committee and handed their rules to the IOC. As far as the team representatives are concerned, Tibet's application is legitimate. And there are lots of nations that take part in the Olympic Games, although their political status is partly or not at all recognised, like, for instance, Palestine. Therefore, it is legitimate that Tibet is also there. In fact, nations that are not sovereign states, like the Palestinians, do participate in the Olympic Games. Taiwan is also allowed to take part, despite the fact that in the eyes of the Chinese it is a part of China. Indeed, Taiwan has to fly a purposely designed flag, which says Chinese Taipei. The Olympics have always stood for fair play, peace, and international understanding. Wouldn't the participation of Chinese-occupied Tibet be a sign of the Olympic spirit? The headquarters of the IOC in Lausanne remains silent. Despite repeated requests, we were unable to get an interview. However, in a written statement, the IOC emphasised that there has been no formal application from Tibet. In addition, only delegations from internationally recognised states can be permitted. These regulations, they say, have been tightened up in the past few years. In the campaign office of the Tibetan team, they suspect that the IOC does not want to annoy the mighty China. China would never allow the Tibetans to participate at the Olympic Games. So the Tibetan sportsman's website was blocked long ago in China. I don't see any other reason. A negative decision with a political and economic background really has nothing to do with the Olympic ideal. Jan Mühlenthaler, a journalist and expert in sport and politics, believes the Tibet question is politically awkward for the IOC.
Solche Fragen zu diskutieren ist das eine, aber sich dann auch allenfalls
in fact,
falsch zu verhalten,
the awarding of Olympic status is closely tied in with the issue of human rights.
Die ein Großerfolg werden sollen, verärgern könnte.
But the IOC tends to show a certain false caution over some of these types of political questions. And Tibet is one of these.
Eben auch an das Einhalten der Menschenrechte. Es ist naiv zu glauben, dass das jetzt
It is naive to think that within a few weeks it will be finalised.
Ich denke, es ist beides ein bisschen.
It's a little bit naive, but at the same time, they are entitled to grab this chance to promote their rightful cause.
Anliegen, die ja berechtigt sind, Werbung zu machen.
Dominick Erne remains optimistic, and he's looking forward to challenging his Chinese opponents at the Olympics. First of all, to play against the Chinese, because table tennis is their national sport. It would be the best moment if I could beat the Chinese. Rigzin Gyaltag is also counting on receiving permission to compete in Beijing. It would be a sign of hope for the politically oppressed Tibetan people. It's not like everything we do is in vain, or that no one has noticed it. You can see the support from abroad. Therefore, we have to carry on, because it really helps the people in Tibet. Whether the Tibetan flag will actually fly at the Olympic Games in China is doubtful, but the Swiss Tibetan sportsmen are far from giving up.